Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth and final episode in our Hero's Journey series. Today, we will cover the third act of the hero's journey, which includes Act 10, The Road Back, 11, Resurrection, and 12, Return with the Elixir. Now, a quick note before we continue. These names may be a bit misleading, especially considering that Stage 9 was called The Ordeal and that the hero faced a big challenge. After a stage like that, seeing The Road Back or Resurrection might lead to some confusion. Just keep in mind that these labels were created for specific genres such as classical, mythology, or classic works. About The Road Back. The story is not over yet, as this phase marks the beginning of Act 3. Now that he has seized the reward, the hero tries to return to the ordinary world, but more dangers, inconveniently, arise on the road back from the inmost cave. As you can see, once the hero has acquired the sword, or magical item, in the previous stage, they must now march to face their final enemy. This may or may not include some extra obstacles for fun. A discussion with a friend, a taunt from an enemy, a surprise attack by TIE fighters on your way to the Death Star. But as a general rule, it is the last stretch before the final showdown. I will change the format a little bit and proceed to exemplify this with my own story. After deciding to quit my job, in the days following the loss of my grandfather, I went to my mentor's office to inform her of my decision to quit my job. Wow. I was nervous because she had hired me just a few months ago and I felt like I was letting her down. After all, she would have to find a replacement, hire them, and train them. I explained the situation and how things were not working for me, and that I planned to focus on other projects. I was surprised when she said, "You can do much better than this place." That was the last bit of resolve that I needed to go and confront my boss. And then we move on to the resurrection. It is the true climax of the story. Once the reward has been seized and the road back traveled, the hero must now face the enemy. Here is a true climax of the story. Everything that had happened prior to this stage culminates in a crowning test for the hero, as the dark side gets one last chance to triumph. Wagner refers to this as a final exam for the hero. They must be tested once more to see if they have really learned the lessons of the ordeal. It is in this final battle that the protagonist goes through one more resurrection. Like I mentioned, the idea of resurrection may seem a bit odd after the ordeal. And when adapting to your own story, it could be confusing considering how, ideally, one does not die and then come back to life in the real world. This is usually a metaphorical resurrection, sort of a last hurrah after being knocked down. In Rocky, this is when he is literally knocked down by Apollo, or when Luke Skywalker uses the Force to fire a torpedo down the Death Star's vent. The resurrection is getting up and delivering that last punch. Granted, Rocky lost a fight against Apollo, but he's still a winner in our hearts. In this stage, it is of paramount importance for our narrative that every element that we have created or brought into the story plays some part. Allies, mentors, teachings. Everything should be connected to this moment. Otherwise, they were not important. In movies and books, this is known as Chekhovs Gun. Chekhovs Gun is a dramatic principle that states that every element in a story must be necessary, and that irrelevant elements should be removed. Elements should not appear to make false promises by never coming into play. If you say, in the first chapter, that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there. So I try to find a good example for someone not following this principle properly, and though there are many online, most of them are from movies that you might not have seen because they're kind of old. I think that the Joker in Suicide Squad could fall into this category. He's made up to be a big deal, especially in the trailers, and then during the movie he doesn't really play any important role. I've never seen the movie, but that's the example I found that you guys might relate with. I suppose that I could make a video in the future with examples. The most important thing to remember is that this is the climactic moment, and that the hero should not just walk in and blast everyone away with powers that they have never used before. It should be a challenge, and it should be difficult. In my case, I told my boss / coordinator / supervisor / mentor that I was quitting. But I still had to inform the owner of the school. You know, the guy that actually paid my salary. Let me tell you, he was having none of it. This final showdown actually went on for a couple of days. First, he acted offended and surprised. How could I walk away from a commitment like this? Was I that unprofessional? I had a commitment not only to him, but to my students, who, not to brag or anything, but absolutely loved me. I work with 4th graders, and just after a few months, they adored the lessons and activities. To be honest, I was more concerned about them. But anyway, he told me that he was disappointed, and what was the issue? Was the pay not good enough? It wasn't. But that was not the issue. Were the hours too long? They were. And that was kind of the issue, but it wasn't the main one. I explained to him that the real reason was that I was working on a project that would require a lot of my time, and that it was actually for a good cause. It would be one-of-a-kind resource for social workers and policymakers in Mexico, and the author really needed my help. He then proceeded to offer me money. I must be honest, I did hesitate for a second, but when it sunk in, I charged with renewed resolve. No, it was not about the money. He assumed that I was being offered a better pay, but no, I told him, I would be making a third of what I was currently making. It was for the cause. I don't think he really believed me. He then offered to cut me some slack with the ridiculous hours that we had to work and offer me more benefits. These were benefits that coworkers with more seniority than I did not have. And even if I deserved them, I thought that it wasn't fair. I said that I would not budge, and he advised me to think about it. And some thinking I did. I was offered money, better hours, special treatment. How could I not accept? And this is where all the lessons and experiences kicked in. I was not going to be able to work on this project, and it was not what I wanted. I mean, change is scary, and uncertainty is even scarier. So I had talks with my allies, I did some contemplating, and I thought about not what my grandfather would have done in a situation like this, but what the person he saw in me would do. It had been his passing, after all, that got me thinking. And it was not about fulfilling a dead man's expectations. It was just that sometimes we fail to see in ourselves what others can see plain as day, especially when it comes to positive traits and strengths. In the end, it came down to this quote that I love. We improve ourselves by victories over ourselves. There must be contest, and we must win. After achieving victory over myself, I stepped into the office the next day and I said that I would quit and that I had made up my mind. Surprisingly, my boss was more understanding. It wasn't like I had left him much of an option, I suppose. Still, we parted in decent terms, and I told him that I would give him 4 weeks to find a replacement, given how it was very difficult to find teachers in the middle of the school year. I had passed the final test. Last stage, stage 12, return with the elixir, in which the hero has a triumphant homecoming. Finally, the hero gets to return home. However, they return as a different person than the person that left their home in the first place. They've grown and matured as a result of the journey they've taken. This is the final stage. The hero goes home, puts the uniform away, becomes a farmer, and lives happily ever after, until they are asked to become president of the United States, because who can refuse that? In all seriousness, this stage is the end of the road. There should be growth and there should be change in our characters. They're wiser, stronger, nobler, humbler, classier. Depending on the kind of story you're telling, the elixir can be a physical item, like Bilbo's treasure chest, or metaphorical, like Bilbo's character growth. Many things have changed during the journey, and the hero should not be the farm boy, the hunter, the student, or the child that they once were. In my case, I think that the physical elixir came to me a few months after, when the book was finally published with my name on it. The farewell with my students, even though it was not a homecoming, it was a going away event, was actually sort of a triumph in itself. Because I realized how much impact I've had in them in just a few months, and all the things that I could share and teach as a result of my adventure. This was not the end of my journey for sure. In the following months, I struggled with the lack of money that comes with going from working 52 hours a week to 12 hours a week. This decision cost me a relationship, and I had to skip many outings. Dining out, going to the movies, and so forth. But in the end, it was all worth it. I got a better job. I'm now studying to get my master's degree. I met my girlfriend, who I love. I got to spend time with my family. I will not change a single thing, because those choices are what led me to being where I am today. So that about wraps up the series. We have made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this material was helpful and that you enjoyed telling your story as much as I enjoyed telling mine. Remember that sources are in the description and that you can leave a comment or a question in the section below. Have a wonderful day, and even though we're not finished with the semester, enjoy your summer break when it comes in a couple weeks. Stay safe, and I will see you in our next class. Yay, we made it!